Okay, day 3. This is pretty fun. You guys sent in some cool questions, and so I was going to try to go through and answer a few of them, or maybe talk about a few ideas on here. Yeah, somebody said, thanks for using the Les Paul in the first video, which I appreciate. I feel like this was kind of my first love in a lot of ways. I used to tour, hundreds of days out of the year with one guitar and one case, and we would be on a bunch of flights, and we'd be in and out of, a bunch of different venues and churches, and just constantly touring. And I had one guitar, I had one Les Paul, not this one, but an older one. I had one case, one Les Paul, and that was my best bud. I was very busy playing, many concerts with just that one guitar. So whenever I grab one, it kind of feels like home in a lot of ways, because I've used it for so long. I love using the Fender stuff as well, Tellys and Fender style guitars, bolt-on neck. I love that stuff. So that's kind of home base for me, is maybe a Les Paul or like a bolt-on Fender style guitar. So thanks for saying that. So I'm looking on some of these comments. It said, Johnny8791, if I may suggest, can you do another video on how you approach supporting the vocal melody with your lead lines? That's a great question. Someone even said that they would also like to hear that. Someone wrote in about, hey, love this. I've been playing this cool cheap micro scale for a few years already. Can you give me some advice how to escape the pentatonic and some old patterns and learn something more fresh? Man, you're telling me. I want to learn something fresh. So I'm constantly looking for that too. There are multiple people talking about what do you play on top of a song, and how do you choose what notes to play, or how do you know what goes with the song. And so I think that could be a cool kind of series to go through. Maybe we do multiple videos on this, but just a way to talk about how do you know what to play, what notes to play over the song. And man, I have a lot of thoughts on that. And I think one thing to consider is, when you listen to a song, as a guitar player, you might hear the guitars, but for most people, they just know if they like the song or not, right? Or if it moves them in any way. And so really the song is the reason that your guitar is being heard at all. So if you record on a song, for the most part, there's going to be a vocal, right? Unless it's instrumental music. For the most part, there's going to be a vocal, maybe a whole lot of production on the song, and there's lots to think about. So when I'm approaching a song to support on guitar, you are thinking about how that plays with the vocal. And years ago, when I was first thing I ever recorded with the guys I tour with, first thing I ever recorded with Chris, we were in a studio, and the producer, Matt Bronley, I was like 19. I didn't know what I was doing. And he was like, hey, listen to the vocal, wait for a spot where the vocal isn't, and then play in that spot maybe, or listen for the holes, listen for the gaps and the spaces in the song. And he was so good at that. That was eye-opening. That was my first one, when I was 19, my first time ever recording anything in a real studio. And that really opened my eyes to thinking about, I'm not just, just playing notes just because I think they sound cool. And that's what's weird, is as a guitar player, you might sit around and come up with a little guitar hook or a riff or something that you think sounds cool. And then when you try to apply it in the song, it just may not make sense. I've written parts that I thought, man, this is such a cool part. And then, we're working it out with the guys, or maybe we're in the studio and they're like, maybe it's just keyboard there. And I'm like, oh man, I liked that part. So I think it's a thing hopefully that matures as your playing matures. I know for me, I'm constantly working at this. Trying not to overplay, trying not to play on top of something that I don't need to play on. and respecting the people that you're playing with, the guys and girls that you're playing with, making sure that you're not, playing on top of their parts. So I think just, how do you approach that? Well, I would listen to the vocal and listen to what it's doing. If there's a vocal that has a lot of space, it's like maybe there's a line that's sung and then there's some space, and then a line that's sung and then there's some space. Well, that is kind of like what tips you off to know, oh, okay, that's a good spot to play in. Or sometimes it's taking the vocal melody and just borrowing that. Like we, years ago, we recorded Your Grace Is Enough for Chris. It's a Matt Maher song that Chris recorded. We did that like 16 years ago in the studio. And the first demo version I heard of that, there was a guitar that was playing something kind of like the verse melody. And so I thought it sounded cool. So I just was like, man, I don't really see any reason to come up with something different than that. Let's just play that. And so, if you think about the hook from that song, if you're familiar with it, there's nothing going on here much too fancy here. It's just Les Paul into a little Princeton. So the vocal melody of the verse is the, that's the melody in the verse, and that's also the intro of the song. Now all we really did was just kind of, I just tried to make it have a lot of energy and maybe add. So I did like a drone note on the A G string, capoed, and I just played the same melody over the droning note. You get all those little patterns. So the reason I play that is that's an example of how do you find the right melody, or how do you find the right notes? Well, that one was already in the song, and in that case, I had heard it on a demo. I think maybe Matt Maher, I don't know if he played it or whoever was playing with him at the time, but it's like, oh, cool, I think that's the right thing. Let's go after that. So we recorded like a version like that, and there's a lot of examples of that. So that's like one way you could just borrow from the song, like you hear the melody of the song. Now sometimes that can be too much, like you don't want to just play the exact melody of the song, because sometimes that can sound a little funny maybe, or it might be the wrong vibe for the song. Sometimes it's just a very simple like pedaling kind of thing. So for a lot of times I use that. I'll just pedal, it might just be like a, like say you're in, I'm already in A, so say we're in A, and the song is just gonna sit on the one chord for the intro. So it's just like, like maybe that's the whole vibe of the intro. Well, one thing you could do is just take your G bar chord, keep an open string. I like these notes that are similar a lot of times. So like this note, when you've got two notes that are the same, so I'm on the D string on the 7th fret here, and then the open G string, same note. You can get a lot of work right there, and you don't have to like, not playing anything too fancy, but it just gives a little bit of movement. So say the song starts in, just kind of a G, you could just be like, you're just finding like little places to move within the song. And I use that a lot. Or maybe you add a little verb or some delay. Analog delay, baby. All right, here we go. Or maybe it's just a little bit of verb. Just got like a little boss verb on. that's not a song necessarily, but what I'm saying is you're just finding like a little way to like make something out of what could just be a one chord, you know, like maybe the person you're playing with doesn't have an intro to the song, and they're like, you know, this happens a lot in worship music. It might just be an acoustic guitar, and they're just like, hey, I'm just going to play this. But I've worked on some demos and some songs before where they were like, hey, we don't really have anything for the top, it's just an acoustic guitar, or maybe it's just a pad, like, could you come up with something? Or let's have something maybe there. And so I think that's when we have to kind of get creative and figure out how to like make a one chord, you know, sound interesting. Maybe you're playing it differently. You know, another good trick that you can use a lot with, you say, what melodies do you play on top of things? Well, a lot of times it's just back to the chord voicing thing. So it's not really a melody, but it's just a new way to play the chord that might make it sound more interesting. So like, let's take that example. So you're just playing it, you know, an A. Now this is one that's tried and true. A lot of you guys may know this, but for those of you that don't, this is a cool trick. You can use this G string that's just keep it open, and then you can play right octave. Well, it's not an octave, same note, but yeah, you get the point. They're both an A, and then you add this top third in, right? Sounds simple, but if you add in a little bit of sparkle, so I'm not really doing anything that fancy. You add a little bit of verb and delay, and all I'm doing is playing. It's like a bar chord. You learn all these, right? It's just a bar chord, but you've kind of opened it up with a ringing string. So let's say the song is like the intro pattern is like G, C, and D. Or in this case, I'm playing G, C, D shapes, but it's an A, so A, D, E. So you could play. It's fine. But if you're trying to find something that's just a little more interesting, you can play these shapes, and you don't have to you're not really doing anything that fancy. Now, all I'm doing is I'm just playing two notes out of the chord. So instead of playing, which is fine, you're just playing. And then you've got that open G if you need a pattern. Or you can stay in one spot. Kind of move around. So what to play on top of the song, maybe we can talk some more about that as we go, but there's some good ideas for you to play around with. You can play this open droney kind of that thing, or you can play drone the G string and you play your melody up here, and you can get a lot of work done in life with just the 3, 4, 5, or 3, 4, 2, right? And that's all on top of this. Minor. So either you're very familiar with this and you already know it, or maybe you never heard this. You've heard it on records, but you never really know what you're hearing. And it's just a fun way to spell out some chords. So you either you're very familiar with this and you already know it, or maybe you never heard this. You've heard it on records, but you never really know what you're hearing. And it's just a fun way to spell out some chords. So Okay, you can also do it down here on these bar chords. I first learned these a long time ago when I was going through my Dave Matthews phase as a teenager, and I was learning all these, you know. You can learn all those chord shapes, and those are great. Just 2 notes. So that's something to work on. And like I said, there's a lot of melody in there that you don't even really have to work that hard. You're not really writing a melody. You can just be playing the chord. So what you did was you accidentally wrote. Which kind of sounds like a hook, and all you did was play, you know, the chords. All right, something to work on. We'll keep going down that road. There's so many other good questions in here. We're going to keep kind of breaking these down. Really loving these, and I hope this is helpful. And yeah, I'm going to try to keep these somewhat short so that it's digestible, and we'll just move on to new topics. Or we can do series, like maybe, you know, like we did a couple of parts on a chord voicings thing. Maybe we'll look at melodies. Maybe we'll do like a tone series. Several of you had questions about dialing up gain stages into an amp, or how do you set up a tube amp, running stereo. Like right now, it's just it's just my iPhone mic and a Princeton over here. So trying to do something in stereo probably won't work yet. But if I can, I'm in my home studio, so I could definitely run like a stereo mic rig and maybe edit it in iMovie if I get that fancy. This is all new to me here on YouTube. But man, thanks so much, guys. This is really cool. I'm going to keep trying to throw these up every day. It's crazy out there right now, and I know that you know, guitar is a good distraction. It's a good outlet. And I'm really having fun being creative with this and trying to find ways to teach. So keep saying hello. Let's stay connected, and I'll yeah, see you on the next video. Super fun. Thanks, guys.